Sure, we all know Pokémon isn't the hardest game series around, and with a little strategy and a team that isn't too far behind the level curve, you should be able to waltz through pretty much every opponent with relative ease. There may be an occasional Volo or Ultra Necrozma here and there, but they're few and far between. But hey, at least those live up to their names, to their stature, to the lore, and how the game builds them up. That is not always the case. There have been several opponents over the course of the series that are supposed to be strong and a serious challenge, but end up, well, incredibly underwhelming. And where this is especially common is in a realm of opponents that is really not discussed that much. Evil teams. Most often when these guys come up, it's about how evil they are and their story impact. But they're also frequently fought opponents, of course, and their boss is usually one of the culminating fights of the game. And yet, there are so many examples that leave you wondering how the hell we as the player character are the only one capable of stopping them. In fact, that has been present ever since the dawn of the series. In Red and Blue, Team Rocket's great leader Giovanni, the mob boss himself, has a team consisting of two unevolved Pokémon, Rhyhorn and Nidorino. His entire team only knows normal type attacks and Poison Sting, with later versions of Kanto games adding Double Kick to Nidorino and Nidoqueen for some extra coverage. But that means that not only can his Pokémon do absolutely nothing against any opponent that hits super effective, like a Psychic type or a Water type, the gym leader specializing in ground type moves doesn't use a single ground type move when he's in his role as Team Rocket's leader. Makes you wonder why we are the ones to stop him in Saffron City. I feel like local gym leader Sabrina could wipe the floor with his team with just her Alakazam. And then later, when he becomes gym leader, he still only uses two Rhyhorn, not even a Rhydon, and can still be swept by any Pokemon knowing a strong water type move. Which is everyone, because Surf is mandatory of course, and none of his Pokemon have anything to deal with a water threat. If Giovanni is already this shaky, it shouldn't be a surprise his underling? Replacement? Whatever Archer is of Giovanni in the Johto games, it is hardly a powerhouse either. In the absence of Giovanni, Archer is basically the main villain of the game, but if you look at his team, you'd think he's a glorified grunt. He's only fought once, which is during the climax of the game's evil team plot, the occupation of the Goldenrod radio tower. What remains a mystery is how he managed to command any respect though, as his team consists of only 3 Pokemon, 2 of which are first stage evolutions, Houndour and Koffing. Hell, his Houndour is 11 levels above where it evolves. Archer is deliberately handicapping himself. While of course the Johto games don't put too much of a focus on its evil team plotline, the fact still remains he's the culmination of it and the region's greatest threat, which all falls incredibly flat when you look at his team. I find it hard to imagine what kind of player would ever struggle against Archer. I guess maybe if you picked Meganium and never used anything else? But even then it would now be so overleveled it's still a cakewalk. Archer is just massively underwhelming from all angles. But it can still get worse. One region later, so Hoenn, but a good few generations later, so Oras, we encounter Team Magma and Aqua again. And while their leaders are already nothing to be too impressed by, Maxie and Archie are at least stronger than Archer, and probably Giovanni too. Sure, they both use a Mighty Anna in their final battle, which has no business being there, but at least they have 4 Pokemon, and their final is a Mega Evolution. It's not great, but it's not the worst thing ever. Their underlings, on the other hand, the teams created for Matt and Courtney are shocking. I mean, I say team, but they're not really teams to begin with, they're one Pokemon, either Camerupt or Sharpedo. The first battle around, this at least makes some sense. One Pokemon is never super difficult, but Camerupt and Sharpedo are relatively strong Pokemon for this point in the game. But the second battle is when you have 7 gym badges, one Camerupt or Sharpedo, not even the Mega, is not remotely a challenge. There are grunts with better teams than that, seriously. Making matters even worse is the fact that especially Courtney is portrayed as this highly intelligent and capable figure, which contrasts her team greatly, not to mention that at the climax of the story, their purpose for battling you is to stall. They want to stall you from following the leader, and use a one Pokemon team to do so. And then in the post-game, during the Delta episode, it becomes their goal to, against all odds, still make Archie and Maxie's dream come true. And even now, they still refuse to add even one extra Pokemon to the team. It's bizarre, it's really weird. But that you don't need to be a member of an evil team to deliver an underwhelming performance is something Sword and Shield proves. Well, obviously this story climax is underwhelming for varying reasons. I don't necessarily think there is anything outright wrong with Oleana or Rose's teams. Oleana has a very diverse team, which is great, and Rose may be monotyped, but it's still a good team at a good level with more than enough type coverage. Now, the real anticlimax of Sword and Shield is the battle against Eternatus. As a set piece, this is great. You've got the massive Eternamax Eternatus, the largest Pokemon in existence, and it's such a supreme threat that even unbeatable Leon stands no chance. You and Hop team up to summon Zacian and Zamazenta to lend you a hand in fighting Eternatus for what is basically a max raid battle, and this is where it kinda goes wrong. I get that the point is to show how strong the two dogs are and that they are specifically chosen to stop the evil that is Eternatus, just like the Darkest Day of old, but from a gameplay perspective this is so underwhelming. Zacian and Zamazenta will probably do like 90% of the damage in this battle. They're just much better equipped for max raid battles, so your role feels largely diminished. Even catching it after the battle is scripted, so that doesn't really feel like an achievement either. It leaves you feeling like you weren't really the one to defeat Eternatus, it was mostly the dogs and you were also there to throw a Pokeball at the perfect moment. So much for you being the hero of the story. But of course, the real place to find underwhelming opponents is in that beautiful system the Pokemon League has put into place. That said, most of the weakest gym leaders are actually fairly early on in the game, at which point I don't think they can really be called underwhelming. I mean, let's be honest, who expected Viola to be good? Now, when I think of an underwhelming gym leader, I think of someone like Blaine. His entire character and gym setup plays into the fact he is supposedly super smart and knows a whole lot about Pokemon. He's a specialist in a type known for strong Pokemon, Fire, and yet his team is largely underwhelming. Seriously, a Ponyta and a Growlithe in the 7th gym? Not to mention that in the Kanto-based games, none of his Pokemon know a Fire-type move that's actually consistently scary. It's either Ember, which is borderline offensive, Fire Spin, which is good in Gen 1 at least, and Fire Blast for Arcanine, which is obviously strong but also prone to missing. Literally every other move across these 4 Pokemon is normal type, so he also doesn't have much in the way of coverage either. Hugely underwhelming for the final new gym leader in the entire region. You know, is there a reason why there are so many gym leaders living on islands with such underwhelming teams? Because Blaine of Cinnabar Island is not the only one whatsoever. Chuck of Cyanwood City with his measly 2 Pokemon is also a complete pushover, saved from further scrutiny today only because he is just the 5th gym leader. Tate and Liza are the same stage in the league as Blaine, come at the end of water routes where you can quite easily have leveled up your grass Pokemon of choice to the point they're beyond the level curve, and then hit you with Solrock and Lunatone. 1 Pokemon each presented in a double battle. I guess that Game Freak thought players would maybe find double battles more difficult than they actually are, but this is a battle that is completely trivialized and over with 1 usage of Surf, the move you literally need to arrive at this gym in the first place. Then again, in Oras, they still only use Solrock and Lunatone, despite it at this point being more than evident that double battles are barely any harder than 1v1s. It's very strange how their team reverted back to Ruby and Sapphire's variant, especially since Emerald actually had a very good fix, making Tate and Liza one of the stronger opponents in Hoenn, more than befitting of the 7th spot. But their Lunatone and Solrock only variant, it's an embarrassment to the job of gym leader. Then again, it's not like there aren't any suckers among the even higher brass. Because even though you would think creating 5 great trainers, an Elite 4 and a Champion, every region wouldn't be that hard, there are still a few whose teams are just baffling. Bruno is an infamous example. A fighting team specialist, an Elite 4 member, and he uses 2 Onix, the literal ace of the very first gym leader, and a Pokemon that doesn't know any fighting type moves. At least it can help against flying types, I guess. Although I doubt their 50 power Rock Throw would cause a serious dent in your late game flyers. I guess we can excuse Bruno for being so early in the series and apparently being planned to tie into Brock, which is why he has the Onix. But when you know Primeape is right there left to be used, it feels like a weird team and an easy one to breeze right through as well. But so while Bruno may have had a bit of an excuse to get away with this, I don't know what Glacia's excuse is. Her Gen 3 team is one of the weirdest Elite 4 teams of all time. She uses 5 Pokemon, but only consisting of 2 evolution families, meaning she has 2 Glalie, 1 Walrein, and 2 Sealeo, a Pokemon that isn't even fully evolved. 2 unevolved Pokemon on a team of an Elite 4 member, that is ridiculous. At least Bruno's Onyx couldn't yet evolve at the time, Leo are just purposefully kept weak. Glacier's Pokemon also have basically zero coverage to do anything against fighting types, and while they are, as a result of Glacier's admittedly understandable Sphere obsession, well suited to dealing with fire and rock types, she is basically just as weak to electric types as Wallace and One are. Which is especially a problem in Emerald, where Wallace is literally still waiting for you a few rooms further ahead. He has the decency to use a Whiscash at least. But while Wallace himself is also far from the strongest champion, I don't know if he really fits the bill as an underwhelming champion. I mean, he was upgraded from gym leader to champion, that alone should cause some doubt over how strong he really is, right? So instead, for the final pushover of the video, I want to talk about Diantha. Sure, X and Y might just be the easiest Pokemon games of all, but I actually don't think the Kalos Elite Four is actually that bad. They have decent teams, good coverage, solid levels, it's pretty good. Which makes it quite underwhelming that the champion waiting after them is just not good. Of course, Diantha is better than her Elite Four members, but she is certainly the champion equivalent of a pushover. 3 of her Pokemon are weak to Steel, which is a real problem when you get a Mega Lucario for free. 4 of her Pokemon are weak to Ice, and her levels are barely any higher than the Elite Four members before her. As if the game expected you to just not get any experience from those battles. She is nowadays often compared to Geeta when it comes to weak, disappointing champions, but while Geeta is hardly a powerhouse either, she at least has a solid, potentially strong team. Sure, she uses them in the wrong order, that is quite a flaw, but I would still say Diantha is a more underwhelming final opponent, especially when compared to the Elite Four that predates their battles. But what do you think the most underwhelming opponents in Pokemon history are? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing. And if you really want to support me, you can now become a channel member to get all kinds of fun perks and help me keep bringing these videos to your doorstep every week. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.